I'm Lindsey. I graduated from Texas A&M University in 2012 and started as a reservoir engineer at BP on the New Well Delivery Wamsutter team. Last November, I moved to Gulf of Mexico in the Operated by Others base management team. My project is on deep water well intervention planning and evaluation. Late last year, during a partner meeting, Shell proposed performing an intervention on the Mars A22 producer in the Mars deepwater field. Deepwater interventions are very expensive, and so it's important that we're very rigorous in our approach and that we're doing the right thing for these wells. In response to the proposal, I performed an evaluation of the well to try to assess whether or not we were also seeing an impairment in the form of damage increasing over time. The surveillance methods that I applied are the reservoir fluid characterization from our PVT data, pressure transient analysis, production well testing, open hole logging interpretation, and real-time pressure data. When a well has damage, there are multiple paths you could go. You could decide that it was worth fixing the well and it was a good candidate to do an intervention, or you could decide to not fix the well and just let the well produce as it is at a suboptimal level. The inputs to my PI models to do pressure transient analysis and prosper modeling are the structure map of the G4 Ultra Blue reservoir. This well is a single well penetration of this reservoir that was completed as a frac producer in 2004. I also used the open hole log analysis as inputs to my model. The G4 sand has two lobes, a porosity of 34%, and it's a heavier oil of about 18 degrees API gravity. I also used the wellbore schematic. This well is an uphole recomplete from the violet sands to the Ultra Blue reservoir. The first step in my project was doing the pressure transient analysis. I used our historical production and pressure data from 2004 to try to assess whether or not we were seeing damage over time. The green derivative plot is the base case when the well was first completed in 2004. The skin in this case is low of 2.4. The dark blue line is the derivative plot at the end of last year. The skin at this time is 9.6, and you can see that the skin had been steadily increasing over time. Based on my pressure transient analysis, it was pretty clear that there was damage to the well, and the next part of the process was to try to determine whether or not it was fines migration, scale, or asphaltenes. And so I worked with the senior PE to plot the tubing differential pressure over time. And you can see that the tubing DP is decreasing over time, which corresponds to the decreasing flow rate. The well is also producing very little water, so it's unlikely that it was scale. I also looked through old AFEs and found that Shell had performed an acid stimulation on this well in 2009, which was very successful and added 4,600 barrels of oil per day. And so based on this, I could rule out scale and asphaltenes, and it was likely that the damage was being caused by fines migration, which was pretty typical for this kind of reservoir. The next step was creating the prosper model to try to model what kind of rate increase we could get if we were able to reduce the skin from 9.6 back to the base case skin of 2.4. And so I used the outputs from my PI model, such as the permeability, and these inputs to create the prosper model. The first step was the vertical lift performance tuning and matching the bottom hole pressure gradient from the latest well test. I used the Petroleum Experts 3 correlation, which is suitable for heavier oils. And then next I did the inflow performance relationship and vertical lift performance calibration to the last well test, and modeled the well's operating point at about 4,600 barrels of oil per day. I then modeled the uplift that we might get if we were able to reduce the skin. And you can see it was modeling close to 6,000 barrels of oil per day after the stimulation if we were successful in remediating the damage. Finally, I looked at the flow efficiency of the well. Flow efficiency is the flow rate with the current skin of about 9.6 divided by flow rate with 0 skin. And you can see with a skin of about 10, we were in this kind of optimal window. If we were able to reduce our skin, it would lead to a greater gain in barrels. And And so currently flow efficiency was close to 50%, and you can see from this plot that there's a lot of room for improvement. So following my analysis, BP approved the AFE and Shell went ahead and performed the acid stimulation in February this year. They used a 9:1 HCl-HF mud acid to remediate the fines migration. Following the acid stimulation, we performed a shut-in of the well to do the pressure transient analysis to diagnose whether or not it was successful. The light blue derivative plot is the pressure transient analysis after the stimulation, and you can see that the DP curve has shifted down relative to the pre-acid job PTA. And wellbore storage has also moved to the left, which is very indicative that the skin has decreased. And so for my analysis, the skin had decreased from 9.6 to 3.2, which is very close to the base case. There was also a well test done on the well, and this showed an uplift of about 1,600 barrels of oil per day, which is very good, and we were very happy with those results. You can see on the production plot when the acid stimulation was performed and the uplift, which resulted in the acceleration of about 400,000 barrels of oil. And you can see the rate of the well has been very stable since the stimulation. The total cost of this job was about $500,000 gross, and this resulted in a net present value of $4.5 million, which is 1.3 million BP net. We proposed performing an acid stimulation at another producer in the Mars field, which has similar fines migration issues, which is currently ongoing. We're hoping to see similar results that we saw for this well. My project really embodies BP values of courage and one team. Courage to do the right thing for the wells, and one team to work respectfully with our partners to make sure we're taking care of our base production. Thanks for your time.